Is it okay to begin?
Yep, I was just gonna say it's 11:15. We'll go ahead and get started. I'll turn it over to you, Amy.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you so much, Tracy, and thank you for helping me with the chat room. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. I see some familiar names in there too. So if you're looking for cultivating classroom relationships, you're in the right spot for the breakout session. My name's Amy Farrar. I'm a teacher at Perrysburg High School, and I'm just really excited to be with you today to talk about relational learning. Uh, so I can't really talk about relational learning unless we're talking about our relationship as well. So if you could put in the chat room, you'll see up there a little bit about yourself. That would be great. I want to tell you a little bit about myself as well. And Tracy will just be giving some updates to keep me informed of who we all have together in our learning community, because at least we're going to do our relational learning for 45 minutes. We'll grow our relationship. I have been an educator for 36 years. I graduated from BGSU with a triple major in special ed. I got a job working as a learning styles tutor at Woodland Elementary School. The next year, a job came open at the high school, and I became the head of the special ed department there. I'm really proud of what we've done there. We have really expanded the continuum of services from it was just a resource room for study hall to direct service classes to inclusion to co-teaching. And I've co-taught with algebra, geometry, government, health, and finally English, which really piqued my interest. So for the last 26 years, I've been an English teacher at Perrysburg High School. I currently teach a freshman class that now on the other side, and now I'm the co-teacher from the gen ed side. And I also have an honors American literature class. I went back to get my master's at BGSU, and that is what I've been doing ever since. What type of educators do we have in here, or prospective educators, Tracy?
We have several intervention specialists. We have a few English teachers. We have a career tech educator, and it looks like most people have 8 or more years of teaching
Okay.
in the room.
So,
Oh, yes.
so
With
we
math
have some,
teacher, PE teacher, we've got a good variety.
okay. So we have some seasoned veterans, 8 years or more, right? So you know what education's all about. So let's maybe learn a little bit more together, because I do think that being a masterful teacher is like a master gardener, right? You have to prepare that soil early, right? Before the school year starts, but also before every unit, and honestly, before every day. When you're a new teacher, and I still do this, I hope you take notes on what didn't go well, what you need to remember for the next day, what students having difficulty. So tomorrow and the next day, you can attend to those needs. It's also, as the gardener, you're positively growing that classroom environment through empathy, and the decisions you make should be scientifically proven. You guys have been around for 8 years, so you know a lot of fads have come and gone, right? So what really is scientifically proven to be best for students? I find myself geeking out on some of that research, and I think it's important because it informs my instruction. And in the end, it makes everyone a great steward for every student. So I hope you find that true. All right, so what is relational learning? I'm guessing that you didn't expect a catapult on there, right? But this far into the morning, maybe coffee's dying out, so I figured you needed something. So there's the catapult, because I believe relational learning catapults student academic growth and has so many more ramifications to help kids. But this is a pedagogy I founded, and I think it's really based on authentically investing in people. So if you could add an interest or two of yours, whether personal or not, because how can I enjoy this relationship with you today for 45 minutes or maybe longer, who knows? Uh, if how can you enjoy it with your students, right? Because this isn't just a touchy-feely type of pedagogy. I'm going to spend 5 minutes today just getting to know each other. About 10 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes, I'm going to spend on the research that shows this is so much more than this fluffy, just merely empathetic way of teaching. And the rest of the time, I really want to spend on making it practical for you. What can you take away? I hope you take away two takeaways, whether you write them down on paper, put them in a Post-it note, two takeaways from today that you can use for the rest of the year, and one that you can start next week. Here's why. Just to begin with, it seems like a common question. Teachers ask questions all the time of their students. Here's why the scientific part backs it up. When you ask students and get to know them, then suddenly you can provide examples in your classroom that show the idea and relate to it and connect to it. Then you take that new knowledge and you hook it onto something experiential or emotional for them that's in long-term memory. That facilitates the retrieval, and therefore it helps long-term memory because of you mindfully planning examples for the students based on who's in your classroom. All right, so why? Why should we do this, right? Or what is it? A pedagogy that prioritizes the relationships amongst all members of the learning community, and it enables all students to reach their greatest potential. So that's what relational learning really is. All right, why bother using it? It has been proven now as the #1 factor impacting student learning and growth. If it's the #1 factor proven by piles of research, then why aren't we using it more to our advantage? It also helps found educators' decision. 8 years in, you all know there's a lot of stress. I have to admit, those of you intervention specialists, may be extra stress for you, having been a special ed teacher, right? But it becomes the iron string. When you have to make a decision in your classroom, and they say decisions are the number of decisions you make in a day is what causes so much stress. That's why nurses and teachers have so much. So why not reduce that for yourself? A gift to yourself is use relational learning as the iron string. Every decision you make just comes back to, does this build the relationship in my classroom? If it does, the answer is yes. And if it doesn't, the answer is no. It makes it simple, easier, faster, and more effective. So here's about 8 years ago is when this came to my attention. I didn't even have this pedagogy down, but I started to notice, several of you probably have, if you teach phys ed and English and math, you have several sections of the same course and same prep. And I started noticing that there was one section every year that would outperform the other classes, and I couldn't figure out why. I looked at homework percentage completion. I looked at how frequently they come to school. I looked at all kinds of dynamics. And then I started actually tracking the data. For 6 years, I tracked the data. Every single test score was 3 to 12 percentage points higher by that class, with two exceptions. Now, of course, you ask what makes, if you're basing it on how strong of a relationship it is, what are indicators of a strong relationship? Constant conversation. As soon as the kids see each other as they're coming into the classroom, they're talking already, right? When I say, hey, time to stop talking, the bell rang, I actually have to tell them to stop talking. That's great. I love to have them stop talking. But in relational learning, they stop talking almost immediately because there's a relationship of trust. And there's typically expectation levels as well. I looked at positive body language. Now, after COVID, this was hard. I don't know if any of you saw this with a mask, when the mask came off. Yeah, that was the face, right? No matter whether they were happy, sad, excited, confused, that's the face. So when I started to see real signs of smiling, not head nods to the teacher, right? That we have a relationship, they're paying attention. Participation in class, your first four to five common people or everyone starting to participate. Self-advocacy is also a sign of a strong relationship. So I hope you're thinking through these for your own classroom right now. What signs do I have of that strong relationship? Do they self-advocate and email me, come to ask me questions, right? Do they ask in class or more personally, but they're still asking, right? Empathy and support. If a student's out for several days, do they ask where they are? Do they even ask to send, hey, can we make a card and send it to them? Risk taking. A great teacher, Roger Southward, said, take a risk, your courage will grow. Are your students taking risks in your classroom and not worrying that they will be humiliated by you or embarrassed by their peers if their answer is wrong? Because when they choose to take great risks in the classroom, trying to answer questions and maybe knowing they're wrong anyway, that's when the learning really catapults. And also, passion for organics. So I look at organics is something different. We won't have too much time, but I'll mention those so that lets you know what they are. All right, so we saw the graph of the research. You can see how they outperform whether it's traditional testing, a research paper, multiple choice questions, Socratic seminars, persuasive speeches, pop quizzes even. This is the one exception right here, but that's because it was an organic. I have an ongoing contest for vocabulary all year. I want them to really transfer that skill and not memorize and forget. If you have a quality or aspect to your class that you really want to ingrain and has been having trouble transferring all year long from one unit to another, a learning board in the back of your classroom is a great idea. Essays, but they outperform them. So I thought, well, that's great that it's my research, but what about everybody else's research? Maybe this is just my thing. So right now, could you put in the chat, what do you think are the positive effects of stronger student-student and student-teacher relationships? The research is really compelling about the multitude of effects and the main effect. So if you're not sure what to add to the chat, I'm gonna zip there. Tracy, what kind of ideas do we have coming into the chat?
We
Do
have
we
a,
have
we have
about
a shy group. We just got some.
that's
Less
okay.
bullying. Students learn more when the relationships are strong. Helps with classroom management, a sense of community, raises expectations, higher
Yeah.
grades. Students want to work with you.
Yes. Yeah, these are excellent, excellent. We will all see that these actually all happen with relational learning. So I'm going to show you what some of the researchers say. I'm going to try to be pretty brief here because I really want to get to the pragmatics that help you. But I think if you have full buy-in that the relationship is actually more important than the learning, then you'll realize that because of the relationship, the learning is maximized and catapulted. So really, it's the relationship that is the foundation for greater learning and student outcomes. So Waterford.org says that it helps with absenteeism. You can't teach a kid who's not there. And once they get there, right, how motivated are they to learn? Do they embrace the goals they set themselves or you set for them? And when they do have those goals and you set them as a class, do they self-regulate, keep themselves on task and moving toward them? Because all of these strengthen academic achievement. Educator from Canada says caring is the most important thing a teacher can do for his or her students. Dr. McLeod, there are four main styles of leadership. Dr. McLeod came out recently and said authority of care is a fifth. And this authority of care is what causes higher levels of academic learning along with transformational leadership. Abraham Maslow, way back in 1943, The Hierarchy of Needs, he says that physiological needs, if you remember that, can picture that little prism, right? Triangular prism. Physiological needs are the most important. But within the last couple of years, it's been supplanted. Instead of needing food for the day, a kid can't concentrate if they don't have food. Kids come to school anyway because they want to belong. If you give that sense of community, I have kids who tell me, I just came for your class today, Farrar. I'm sure you have kids who tell you, this is my favorite class. This is why they come because of you and what you've done, right? So keep doing that because we can't teach them if they're not here. Buswell says, good teachers develop in every child something, however small, which he or she or they can contribute to the group, because to be on the outskirts of a group harms the child, and it harms the child, it harms their learning, and it harms the learning of the whole class. You're going to see that this is a sociometric data because the student-student relationship is just as important as the student-teacher relationship. One last bit of research here. that the number one factor for student efficacy in 2007, it was immediate feedback. Sure, if they make a mistake, we need to gently correct them, but directly correct them and let them know so they don't make that mistake again and again until we finally get to the point of giving feedback. But in 2018, pre-COVID, greeting students at the door, that seems so lowly correlated with academic growth, but it is, right? How would a student ever take your advice and your feedback if they don't even like you, if they don't even relate to you, if they don't even know you and you don't know them? Think about the people you take advice from, right? You take the advice from people you respect and you like, and they will as well. They will enjoy it much more. Post-COVID, they said that relationships are the catalyst. We have to use these because they catalyze the two most significant gains they saw and outcomes were higher test scores nationally and in the classroom. And this one in bold here, this is a biggie for me. Exceptional academic depth and focus. I'll say it again. Exceptional academic depth and focus. I don't know how many times have you heard a teacher say, "Ah, I'm so tired of my students just doing their homework and moving on and not giving their best effort. Why can't they transfer this to other curriculum or to the next unit? Why do I feel like I have to go back and reteach because they really didn't learn this skill? Why do I feel like they forget right after the test?" Because when you have a relationship, you get into deeper conversations, connect to more, and that's where the academic gains really start and the real learning. But building this caring relationship, it starts prior to day one and it never ends. So, since most of you have been here for 8 years, what have you done to cultivate a culture of care in your classroom? If you could add that to the chat, I'd appreciate that. Don't be shy, right? And then Tracy, when you're ready, just let me know what we've got here. But a culture of care, because this is a learning community. We only grow best and most when we are safe and comfortable and have that sense of belonging, like Maslow said so long ago. Tracy, what do we have?
So a few people have posted things like asking students about their activities or their games or sports, celebrating their birthdays, individual conversations with students. So those are some examples.
You know, I love hearing those because they're the day-to-day type of relationships that have to be embedded. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So it sounds like a lot of you are already embedding the relationship in your daily routine, which makes it a real learning community. So here's some steps.
Do you want a couple more real
Oh,
quick?
yes, please.
Sure. Some others have noted calling home often or attending extracurricular curricular activities or even visiting students' homes, engaging in their personal interest and asking about what they did on the weekend.
Wow. Okay, so now I see why some of you signed up for this breakout session because you are really embracing uh, that opportunity to call home, to visit home. That takes a lot of extra time. But I hope you feel, obviously you do because you're continuing to do it, that the rewards are magnifold. So excellent. All right, steps. So here's some steps. I hope, again, look for maybe for two that might be new ones to add in to what so many of you have as your daily routine. But the first step is day one, focus on the student. A lot of getting to know you games and activities. Have fun together, right? Let them know who you are and how great you are, right? Also, the beginning of the year, I think students are more attentive to reflecting on how last year went and what changes they want to make, what goals. So it's a great chance not only for you to get to know them, but for them to get to know themselves. So if you do really feel compelled to give a rule that first day, then say respect, because every meaningful relationship has respect. Step two, though, is still focus on the student. Yes, I say it again, focus on the student, because the number of students I've had come into class after the first week and their heads hanging, or I hear a sigh, like, well, School started again, Mrs. Farrar. Yep, the fun stuff's over. Now it's just homework and the daily grind every day, right? That's because culture isn't in that classroom. That's because they thought the relationship was just for a week, but you have your students for a year, right? So you have to embed it in. So let's talk about how we do that. Some of you are already starting with, I heard like the question of the day, asking them questions. Would you rather? Uh, if you get tired of question of the day and the kids do, there's a teacher in our school, John Moravitz, who's during March Madness, which is coming up. So there's an opportunity for your takeaway. He does a would you rather bracket. So each day might be pineapple on pizza, yes or no. Whatever wins goes on in the bracket until they see which would you rather is the ultimate winner. Right? I'm not so great at greeting the door. I have the blessing of having Taylor Rogers as my co-teacher. He's great at that, but I always start with good morning. It takes about a month before students start saying good morning back. At first, they just sit there quietly because they think good morning is teacher code for shut up and get your homework out. No, expectation level is please be quiet when the bell rings because we're getting ready to start together and get your homework out because we will be talking about it or acknowledging it that day. So they finally say good morning. Then I say, how are you doing? What a golden opportunity it is for you to pan the classroom quickly, make eye contact, see who's not making eye contact, whose head's down, who's having a bad day, right? Who seems a little scattered. So you just walk over and put your hand on their desk as you walk around the classroom so you don't bring attention to them. So it really helps with classroom management and making sure you have all your students together and focused to begin. You already talked about authentic conversations. Homework. That I think is a missed opportunity. With homework, so many teachers, I think, do it as a checklist. Oh, yep, got the point, got the point, got the point. I saw Bob Zion from Clay High School, who was taught an honors class. He did something that he called a homework march, and students would just, here, let's pretend this is our paper. They would just come up and make a line, and they would show it to him and move on. And he sat in this really big comfy chair, by the way, which isn't a bad way to start class. But I have tweaked the homework march because probably the most common counter argument I get to relational learning is it takes too much time. How can I ever cover the curriculum? Math teachers, and I see some of you in here, Joe, right? I know you are definitely like, what unit or lesson are you on, right? I need to keep up, right? I don't know how many of you feel the drive to keep up with the curriculum, right? So this actually saves time. It saves so much time that it gives you time to build the relationship and time to get depth of knowledge. Here's how this homework mark will save you 25 minutes a week. For me, that's half a class period. So at the beginning of the year, I normally play the electric slide when we do this, because instead of students just showing me their homework like that, which I certainly can't read in that time, I have students, they will point to like, hey, here's questions. I'll tell them which one to point to. I know the most difficult problem of the day. And then that gives me an informs my instruction for how much extra explanation, another example they need for that skill to be learned. But they come up in front of me, they slide, they slide, they slide, they slide. I give them a head nod when I've seen it, and then they move on. In 2 minutes, sometimes one, depending upon what I'm looking for, I can get through the entire class. The only time I have to stop is when they don't do homework. But in a classroom with a relational learning culture, few students don't do homework. That becomes less and less of a problem because students don't want to be the outlier, pulling down the class, bringing attention to themselves. So I only stop to do -1 or -0.5, something like that, if they didn't do it. But here's what it also does. It gives me a chance to build the relationship. So if in 2 minutes I can see everybody, think about how long it takes you. 5 minutes, 10 minutes to walk around the whole class to grade their homework, or maybe you just collect it, right? But if we collect it, then we can't give that immediate feedback, right? Until tomorrow, which is still very immediate, right? But not as immediate, right? Because we've got have teaching that's in between there. But some of the students, I don't know, I probably didn't write it dark enough, will come and it says, yes, I'm sorry. That's what it will say. It will have a blank sheet of paper, and instead of humiliating them that they did not do their homework, which I will never do, or embarrassing them, they feel so bad. They come by with a blank sheet of paper. Only the two of us know they didn't do their homework. I don't know what policies you have, but I have it changes throughout the year, either a 2-day late, a 1-day late, or a 0-day late policy. If it's 1 or 2, I can just say, hey, you can show it to me tomorrow, remember, for up to full credit, right? I want to see your effort, right? Thank you for the apology. I know you'll get it done, right? So if it takes me 2 minutes instead of even 7, that's 5 minutes a day that I've saved by quickly going through that. That's 25 minutes and half a class period. That's worth it. Be sure to thank them. Also, thank them for everything. Thank them for coming to school on time. Thank them for the questions they ask. Do you know how many students don't get thanked for the little things they do every day that make them great students? Teachers clearly giving the expectation level is important. It creates not only a physiological type of safety where they know, okay, bags are not in the aisle, so no one will trip, but the emotional safety to take risks. It gives them a sense of belonging, knowing that we all know the rules here. So none of us really want to be the outlier. And it also creates academic rigor. So when they come through, actually, 3 weeks ago, students came through right before break, and I was not pleased with the academic rigor. So asked them, what can you do to make it better? Because this is unacceptable. No one's getting credit. I'm going to give you a chance to redo it. There's still other homework tonight, right? But I'm going to give you a chance to redo it, right? And they're doing better. So let them know the rigor. Students also get the opportunity, though, to convey their expectation level and needs. We typically are the ones telling them our expectation level, but when did they get to convey theirs? If they're truly a stakeholder in this relationship, they have just as much say as we do, even though we are the sense of authority. How many of you do mission statements? Just a yes or no in the chat room would be great, please. I don't know if any of you do mission statements, but I'm going to talk a little bit about mine and how we run those as we go. So I tell them it's one sentence and only one sentence. And here's the question you're going to answer with that sentence. If we are successful this year, how will our class need to run? They create it, students lead students in its creation, and it includes all community members. Tracy, how many do I have?
A couple people have responded. Some have said no, others have said yes. And someone said personally never thought to do it in the classroom. They've done it personally, but not thought about doing it
Oh,
in the
that's
classroom.
cool. Okay. So I want to share with you a little bit more about why I think a mission statement is exceptional in a relational learning environment. It's because it helps with behavior all year. I probably has so few classroom management. I normally write up a student once every 5 years, and typically that student honestly is a kid in the hallway and not even my own. So it drastically improves classroom management. Think about how much less time, right? Or excuse me, how much more time you will have to teach class when you don't have to take care of behavior issues in the class, right? Um, it also helps with maintaining academic rigor. So I'm going to tell you the steps that we go through. I'm going to show you some examples of what they've looked at. So when I feel like the relationship's starting to gain, sometimes it's a weekend, sometimes it's 2 weeks, then I know that they're ready. I use those indicators I talked about before. A couple days before that, I asked for a student volunteer. It could be a leader that I see, not I see as a leader, but I see the kids see as a leader. When they volunteer to answer a question, which their first week, is tough to do for a lot of kids, right? Do the other kids look at them, nod their head at them when they're answering? They see them as a leader. When the kids say something funny, do 1 or 2 kids laugh, or does the whole class laugh? The whole class, they're a leader. right? The kid who acts out, do they ignore them or do they laugh with them because that kid is really a leader, even though they're choosing to act out? So I find my leaders right away and I find my theater kids. So I used to just tell them to create. Now I do something a little different. Um, Now I put them on a mission impossible. I make them the student leaders the next day, become secret agents with me. We are crazy around the classroom, right? Bopping around, moving, right? Being stealth, our best stealthy selves, right? And we do that for about 30 seconds as Mission Impossible plays. And then I tell them what their mission is. Their mission is that they must include the guiding principles, values, and mindset that we must, as fill in the class name, embody daily and hold ourselves, each other, and our teacher accountable for in order to achieve our greatest potential. Notice nothing in here says anything about learning. The kids know it's about learning, but they also start to sense it's about something much more than that. So I have my terms of use, so feel free to use it if you find that that is helpful to you. But some of my students have never seen a mission statement before, so they need help knowing what one is. So I have them answer some questions individually. Then they meet with a group. As they meet with a group, they start to see the qualities of excellent students, right? Qualities of fill in your content area here, right? It was English or math. And then I actually show them some mission statements, some being our high school itself, right? And they get to guess at the bottom, right? To bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Any guesses out there? Whose mission statement is that? Come on, just do it. I know you know it. Yes, it's Nike's. Did anyone say Nike? Yes. So they get to know mission statements. They have some fun with them. But in the end, they're ready to come back. And then they go into a small group and they brainstorm, then share out their ideas. I have whiteboards. They're sticky little whiteboards you can put on the wall. They're so worth buying. I use them for vocab. If you have theorems for math that you want them to memorize, why not put those on your wall, right? And add to them each week that they learn a new theorem, right? For English class, I use it for vocabulary so they can always see every word all year that we have studied, and they can use those in class. Oops, excuse me, went a little too fast there. There we go. So then they take a Galleria walkthrough. They look to see what other students and groups have said. It helps the shy students get validation that what they offered, they can offer to the whole class without fear of embarrassment or humiliation. And for my bold and brave risk takers at the beginning of the year, they see that they're an outlier and they love it and they can't wait to share how they're different than everybody else. So at that point, I asked two students. So now I have one or two students who help me. I have two more students. So I have four students really involved so far in this. I asked two students, a board writer. I want my introverts to know you are a leader in our classroom. Just because you're not a speaking leader, you're a leader and you're valued. Come right to the board, organize our ideas. Now, I do normally use board writers only in brainstorming type of sessions, not in 2-page note sessions because they need to take their own. But they can organize them. Artists love to write pictures next to them, quick little sketches, right? And a discussion facilitator. They decide how to organize getting those ideas out. Teachers, I just stay out of the way and keep my mouth shut all I can. Okay. So I remind them that the teacher, I'm part of this relationship, right? So include me. I remind them, take a risk. Your courage will grow. The idea that you think sounds the most outlandish will probably be the number one idea that catapults our learning. And then they go ahead and design them themselves. So I would love to share some of those with you right now. Let me move over to that. Oops, sorry here. Okay. All right. So this, I'm just going to give you a peek at some of the ones they've done. Some I'll comment about, some I will not. But you'll notice when I said that this helps you manage and save time in other places, it helps you not be a harsh authoritarian figure, but as the authority of the class culture. For instance, this one says strive for excellence here. So when they are not doing homework to the quality that you expect, you walk over and you point to the mission statement that is on the wall, wherever they've chosen it to be, and you have a discussion about that and why it doesn't mesh up to the academic rigor you expect and what they can do about it. What help of yours do they need? And maybe it's about working harder. Also, you'll see that here's some others here. Let's see. Here's one. To reach our greatest potential, we must be willing to grow through perseverance and to build relationships through empathy and involvement. You can see they saw our school. They embedded our school, part of our school mission statement in there. I've noticed that what I tell them leading up to it, it's like front loading some of the ideas for them to consider. I talked about organics. This is my honors juniors class. Yes, they read and write on a college level, and they have little pictures here because their organic was Mindful Mondays. All right, here's another one. This is a freshman. An artist has a chance to contribute to the class. Another student or students do the writing and the art together. So now I have 6 students and joined in the effort. This one I thought was really interesting. If it's hard to read, it says to respect other classmates and teachers in a hardworking environment. I want to show you hardworking up close. This class had 5 students who were ELL students. Some of this one in particular, English, was very limited. I had to explain what each word meant, but I knew he loved to draw. He came in for several lunch periods in a row, ate his lunch, and he made hardworking into a construction site. He contributed. Everyone matters. This was my legume class. This was one of the classes whose learning was better and higher on every summative assessment for the entire year than every other section. Please notice that they did not say one thing in their mission statement about learning. They said working hard, but they wanted to embrace each other. They had an open-mindedness and a vulnerability to take risks. Their organic was they were the legume class. This one was just, I love the words nurturing bullwhip. Hey, when has your class ever told you, class students, to be a nurturing bullwhip? How much fun is that, right? All right, a couple others there. This one I wanted to point out. A student I had in class who's on the autism spectrum. He has a passion for trains, and he really wanted to make it a train, even though nobody else in class wanted to, but no one else had any ideas, and he did, and it became a train. These students are all on the, none of them are on the do not photo list. They're all over 18 now, but you will see that the kids chose where, here and here, where to put them in the classroom so they could refer to them all year. And I told them I would, and I would hold them accountable, and I would expect them to hold me accountable all year long if I deviated. All right. So I might have a little more. Are there any questions out there before? Because I thought this might be a stopping point, and if not, I will move on to something else. And any questions lingering out there about putting any of this into practice that I could attend to?
We had someone ask if you could share the link to the slides. We will also, after the conference, send out a link to the video, and if the presenters can share their slides, we'll send a link to that as well. So for any of the sessions. So if you
Okay.
missed them today, you wanted to see, those will be available for you as well. So
Yes, and I would definitely share the link to the slideshow. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, Tracy, I think we have about 5 more minutes. Is that
Yes,
correct?
right
Okay,
about.
so I think I'll come back to this. All right, something else I have a passion for. It is what I consider the most underrated step that inherently creates culture and increases student achievement and outcomes. Any guesses what you think it might be? And for those of you who are a little reluctant, you need to, take a risk. Your courage will grow, right? Here's some multiple choice options for you. So maybe you want to try one of those out. Do we have any guesses? The most underrated part of culture that we have total 100% control of.
We have a showing vulnerability and realism, or letter E, immediate feedback.
All right, great.
D is
So,
coming.
okay, good. Keep them coming. So my answer is F. I think all of the above is also known as mindful seeding. I do agree that vulnerability. Um, I, I do like that we have to take risks. Um, there are some great TED Talks on that, if you know Renee Brown. So she's excellent, I think. But mindful seeding. I won't have time to get into the specifics of everything, but the Google slideshow will be there. I just want to hit some highlights before our time is out. It inherently differentiates your class. So instead of having to plan individual differentiated units again and again, you can differentiate your classroom just by the seating. First, I attend to the special needs, what legally I have to, the ELL learners who I see close to me so they can ask questions daily. Typically, we meet for about 30 seconds right before the bell rings, and they love that to get them focused and understanding. Then I look at my outliers, and then I look at this academic achievement I want. I'm going to come back to this slide for a second, but I change seats every unit. The standards that you're addressing in that unit. So I look at which students do and do not have the skill sets for those standards already. I can put them similarly side by side with their partner or in a Foursquare group. A lot of research says that groups of 3 are highly productive. I like to use a 4-tiered system for 2 reasons. First of all, it is a protective and a growth oriented, these 2 reasons. One is if students, the protection, they can do it on their own first. So the first level is individual. Then when they have some confidence, they share with their side partner, and then their side partner together, they can share. Thank you. They can share with their Foursquare group, and then finally fourth to the class. But it can also happen the other way around. If academically the student's skill set is not there, they share first with the group in the whole class. They don't have to be someone who shares. They can just listen if they need to. Then they take it down to their Foursquare group to have a little bit more depth of discussion. That night for homework or in class, they can practice alone or they can practice independently to better learn that skill. Consider your whole class configuration. I use a U, which looks like a drive-in theater, I've been told, but I don't care because students are looking at each other in that relationship. But I like to have productive struggle. So the students in pairs might be side by side at the same level. And it also allows enriching challenges for the students who are really high. But in that Foursquare group, there's always someone higher and lower to make sure questions are being asked and answered. All right, a couple of other aspects about it. It increases student engagement time. You can do think, pair, shares. The nonverbal communication is really important to notice and work on as a class. During homework checks, when I walk around, it lets me Oreo sandwich, positive, constructive criticism, positive. And then in relational learning, I know there's so much more we didn't get a chance to talk about. So if anything here intrigues you, or you want to talk more about how I incorporate these daily into my classroom, or at least weekly, I'd be happy for that discussion. So thank you so much for showing up today. And I just welcome further discussion. I hope with relational learning, you have 2 takeaways that you take the risk to embed this year, and one for next week. Cultivate that culture. It really will save you time and it will catapult learning. Always show students you care. Thanks for caring enough to show up, and have a great year.
Thank you so
Tracy,
much for sharing all of
anything else?
the tips and everything that you've shared with us and the level of detail that you've shared. That's great. Does anyone have questions for Amy before we move back to the main room?
I'm going to switch to the chat room so I can actually see them now and stop sharing my screen.
Any have questions?
Yeah.
If you would like, and if you are able to, if you would join back to the main room, we're going to break out into some smaller groups to just highlight some of the things we learned with each other for just a couple minutes. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.